All right, everybody, it's been a while. I've been absent for a bit because I've been preparing for an interview, which absolutely blew up in my face, so life happens. But during that time, I didn't stop reading, and I finished Killing Commendatore, and I also finished Invisible Cities. I already mentioned that I wouldn't do a review for Killing Commendatore because the book is too personal to me, but there is something else I have in mind that I want to talk about with regards to that book, and particularly this time reading it. But also, I read Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino, translated by William Weaver, and that's what I'm here to discuss today. But I feel like all my reviews end up being a little bit different because books are just so different. So I try to have a standardized format. But sometimes, and maybe every time to a certain extent, it gets changed a little bit. So in this case, why this book? It was mentioned in The Wolves of Eternity, but it's also a book that I've known about. I first encountered Italo Calvino in a class on narrative and experiments with narrative in university, and that was If on a Cold Winter's Night, a Traveler. And the book was interesting to me, but it didn't quite land with me at the time. I wasn't really reading postmodern stuff at that time. I was more into straightforward fantasy at that time and mystery novels, which, is fine. It's where I was reading. But the book always kind of stuck with me. It was interesting, if not too difficult. So I've come across Invisible Cities in other books, characters reading it. I've come across it in a few things. It's a very well-known book and a very well-respected book. And as a huge fan of magical realism and stuff, it popped up quite a bit in these things. But I always kind of put it off because I'm also not a fan of postmodernism. But I decided it was finally time to take the plunge. And I'm glad I did. I really am glad I did. Even though, like I said, very postmodern. It does not have, and this is where usually I would explain the plot, but it doesn't really have a plot. It's a fictional version of Marco Polo explaining to a fictional version of Kublai Khan, a series of, I believe it's like 55 or something, thereabouts, cities, none of which are real, by the way. But each one is a brief little thing, sometimes half a page to like 3 pages tops, that has some sort of little insight into humanity or life or living or the way we structure our lives and things like that. So in terms of a plot summary, that's all you're going to get. So would I recommend it? Yes or no? Yes, absolutely. I would recommend it. And before we get into minor spoilers, the one thing I want to say before any kind of spoiler, so if you're listening, please hear me out on this. This is not a book that you just read once and get. And that's going to be the big thing. Like, I call this a review. I call all my reviews, but with the caveat that the first time is hardly much of a review. It's really more of a first impressions. This book, I think, is one of the absolute pinnacle examples of that, where absolutely this is something that if you read it, and it speaks to you, you realize, like, oh, I'm going to just keep coming back and revisiting this throughout the whole rest of my life. And that, like, it's so impossible to do a pros and cons, a thematic breakdown, because really the book is structured in such a way as to be capable of being read in different ways and consequently getting different meanings, but at the same time that you can go through and just each individual section on its own, like I said, has some sort of little insight into human nature and humanity. So you can just go back and reread it so many times as you change as a person and get something new out of it. But you can also read it a different way and get something new out of it. It's very mathematical. Things are divided into groupings, and depending on what order you read it in, depending on what groupings you read. Like I said, there's no overarching plot to it, so it's okay to do that, but the way things group together can give rise to different meanings and different interpretations of these brief little sections. And to that end, it's like a Rubik's Cube in terms, well, a Rubik's Cube only has one answer, but it's like a Rubik's Cube in the way that you can shift it and twist it and turn each square, which is like a segment, and make different combinations, a Rubik's Cube, but with no fixed answer to that end. And it makes talking about the book difficult without really doing like an in-depth analysis of each individual section, which even then, doing each individual section, like I said, it changes its place in the section and the meaning and the context changes depending on how you twist the cube around and how you decide to approach it. So really, this says review, but it's very short, and there's not really much I can say about it other than read it. Read this book. It's very short, and it's the kind of book that is best, really, I think, read not sitting down, going through it in one sitting, but to really just take your time, read one part a day, read not one page. It's divided into 9 parts. You can read one part a day and then reflect on it. Like it is just the perfect book for busy people with small chunks of time to read and get something and reflect on it. And that's really all I can say, like I said, about it, because it's so up to you, up to how you read it, and up to what you get out of it. So all I can just say is, again, just read it, give it a try. I put it off for so long because it wasn't a plot, it didn't have a narrative, and that means a lot to me. But even as that type of person, I enjoyed the content and what was being said so much, and the way that it was being delivered, that I still enjoyed it immensely. And because it's so short and so easily readable, I don't think that there's any reason why anybody should avoid this book, even if you're the type of person like me who really prefers more plot or structure to the books. So pick it up, give it a shot, please. Highly recommend it. And hopefully I will be back next time with something a bit more substantial, either talking about Killing Commendatore and my experiences with it, and specifically what I did this time to get a lot more out of it, or to also talk about something else with that book. But also I am presently reading Lady Chatterley's Lover, so I may also be back with that. So see you then.